Hey guys, it's me, Phoenix. It's me, Phoenix. You know me well. For my film and TV history presentation final, I chose to focus on the module where we talked about new queer cinema. We talked about this in class for a bit, and because of that, I had a lot of great resources to reference for my own personal research. So as we know, the Hays Code, which we learned about in previous semesters, limited creators from putting certain things in their films, and homosexuality was one of them. Homosexuality was referred to by the Hays Code as sexual perversion. Great. Despite that though, creators did kind of work their way around the rules of the Hays Code when it pertained to homosexuality by making jokes or references to queerness through their characters without directly making them queer. As time went on from the beginning of the Hays Code, the depictions of homosexuality became a lot worse, specifically in the 60s. The orientation of characters who were considered gay or bisexual in nature carried the trait of misery. Not only that, but they were also seen as suicidal misfits, who would often off themselves or other people. Just murdering people. All of that took a turn in the 90s though, whenever queer filmmakers were able to express queer characters in their own films in a more genuine way. Queer characters were allowed to exist in a space where the stereotypes that have been used for several decades were not forced upon them in these stories. Not only were the queer characters in these films truthfully queer, as I would put it, the filmmakers making these films were experimenting with new styles of film. But of course, Disney had to keep reinforcing those stereotypes in the cartoons that we all know and love. But since we've taken a closer look at said cartoons in this class, we can see a lot more clearly now what was going on. Disney would code their villains in cartoons as deviations from the heteronormative path that the protagonists in said movies followed. Not only in physical appearance, but also in the mannerisms and phrases that they would use that are associated with the queer community and stereotypes about the queer community. A few examples: Ursula was based on the drag queen Divine. Captain Hook is a fancy man who's flamboyant and a coward and is also obsessed with a young boy, reinforcing stereotypes about queer people being pedophilic. I don't know. You know, you can do with that what you will. Prince John. I loved the film Robin Hood. Prince John is a different kind of queer-coded stereotype. There was a lot of, around the time that that movie was released, there was a lot of speculation going on about queer people, or at least gay men, being obsessed with their mothers. And, you know, John the whole movie is sucking his thumb and being like, "Mommy, Mom," and crying. In The Great Mouse Detective, also love that movie, Ratigan is the villain. He is a properly dressed rat. He's a properly dressed individual who is a closeted rat? He's a rat pretending to be a mouse. And he gets really mad whenever people say that he's a rat. He's clearly a rat. But rats are bad and mice are good. So he's pretending to be a mouse instead of a rat. He's a closeted rat, like I said. Not Jafar being the only man in the Aladdin movie wearing eyeliner. Cruella de Vil was based on Tallulah Bankhead, a queer camp icon in cinema. Unfortunately, the tropes that Disney used during the Hays Code in their cartoons for villains worked so well that they just continued to use queer stereotyping for their villains after the Hays Code dissolved. Disney villains were often outcasts of society. They stood out from the crowd. They looked and acted different than, you know, everyone else in the universe that they exist in. Disney heroes would fight to maintain a certain status quo in their kingdom, in their universe, in their world, while villains fight to change it for the bettering of their own lives, to get revenge, in a sense, for being treated as other. Disney queer coding in films veered people away from people in reality, in our reality, that acted or exhibited the same traits as the villains in Disney films, because the way that they act is associated with villainy, so they must be bad. Personally, I think that us of us who grew up watching Disney cartoons and films, which most of us have been getting these subconscious messages while watching these films that we probably didn't understand as kids. These stereotypes for kids watching at the time was fostering an internalized homophobia towards people in the real world who exhibited these kind of traits. Some people might not understand why they feel a certain way towards people who act like the villains that they watched in movies as kids, or they might not even be able to relate it to that instance. I'd like to talk more about more recent issues that Disney has had with its queer approach in its cartoons. Disney is so used to having the villains depicted with queer coding, so of course, now that things are starting to change or trying to, they're not gonna like it as much whenever it's being displayed in a positive manner for kids, because for some reason homosexuality is deemed inappropriate for children, but heteronormativity is not. She's gonna be a looker when she's grown, whatever. In April of 2023, a children's show called The Owl House was cancelled. The protagonist of this story was not only bisexual, but also Latina, showing representation for Latina kids watching, where they can see themselves in said characters. Her name was Luz Noceda, and she happens to be the first bisexual protagonist in Disney history, in anything they've ever made. Not only is the protagonist queer, but there's also a non-binary character that comes a lot more into the story as the show goes on. An executive at Disney said that the show was cancelled because it didn't quite fit the brand of Disney. They also said that it veered toward an older audience. Maybe that's because older kids who are queer and never got to have experiences of positivity towards that as kids are watching shows that are starting to do that. I don't know, maybe it's affirming or whatever, I don't know. I have no idea. But of course it doesn't fit Disney's image, because Disney doesn't like to push forth positive depictions of queer characters, because they're so used to doing negative ones. They're used to portraying queerness as a trait of villainy. So how could a protagonist possibly be queer? Unheard of. Veering away from just Disney's problem with positive queer depictions on screen, there's another show that I'd like to talk about that was also recently cancelled, probably for the same reason. Netflix's Dead End Paranormal Park was, I think, one of the first times I've seen a trans person as a protagonist in a show. The show only had 2 seasons and then it was cancelled. A lot of other shows were cancelled around the same time, but it's just unfortunate that this is the one that had to go, with having the first trans protagonist in a cartoon that I can ever recall seeing in my entire life. Not only this, but a supporting character named Norma, a Pakistani-American girl who was canonically autistic and bisexual, was in the show. Queer representation in shows for kids often comes along with a lot of other things, like visibility for other cultures, visibility for kids on the spectrum, and kids that are anything other than white, because honestly, having a protagonist in a show not being white is still kind of rare, and that's super unfortunate. I didn't get to grow up watching shows that had visibility for queer people. I didn't even know that gay people existed until I was like 14. Deep South. That's why this is so saddening to me and makes me so upset, because I didn't get to experience that as a kid. Now that people are trying to let the new generation of kids experience it, the way kids are learning about the world and the people around them, being shut down and drowned out so quickly is just disappointing. Super disappointing. It's a big part of why I want to be in this industry. I want kids who are going through what I went through when I was younger to see me and others like me, us, and think, oh, things can get better and I can, do something one day like, because they did it too, and that means I can. Kids shouldn't have to feel ashamed for being different than people around them. Now it's time for my 2023 Queer Gold Star for the cinematic depictions that I thought did it right. So, the first one I'm going to talk about, first one, Knock at the Cabin. Knock at the Cabin. Knock at the Cabin. It's a good movie. One of the queer people dies, so no gold star for you. All of Us Strangers. It's a new movie. I'm not going to spoil it, but no star for you. No, wait, no. That was a good movie. Star for you. Star for you. Star for you. Eileen. It was cool. I liked it, but it did also depict the queer character in question as a psychopath. 1 step forward, 10 steps back, you know what I'm saying? Like, come on guys, do better. Bottoms. Did it right, gold star. Hunger Games. The Ballad of the Songbirds and Snakes. Hunter Schafer. Paving the Way, gold star for you. Nimona. Gender fluid shape-shifting kid whose catchphrase is metal. Gold star for you. Metal! Okay, let's move on. Spider-Verse 2, I don't really know what the Spider-Verse 2 that came out on the second day of Pride Month. If you didn't notice, Gwen is trans. Flag above the door in a room that says protect trans kids. The use of the color with the trans flag colors when her dad accepts her as Spider-Woman and accepts her maybe for some other things too. Gold star. And in conclusion of that, I hope that this year will be better. I think that last year was okay, but I think we can do better. It's us, man. It's us, right here. It's what we're doing. It's what we're heading towards, changing the world. In conclusion, I'd like to say a thank you to Freya, wherever she's standing. I'm not gonna pretend like I know. Everyone give a round of applause for Freya. Freya's the best. Yay, Freya! Alright, that's enough. Thank you for listening to me talk about New Career Cinema. It's been a great semester with you guys. What a long, strange trip it's been in C3B.